A lot's going on in the world, and we'll be talking about that here on Pod TV on August the 13th, 2026. And I see I've got Sasha Star with me. We'll see who else joins us as well. But let me just get to a couple of the news items. U.S. ambassador is calling settler siege of Palestinian homes a horrific act of terror. So, settler siege of Palestinian homes in the West Bank is what a U.S. ambassador is calling a horrific act. But more troops are to be sent to West Bank village besieged by these Israeli settlers. And definitely a search effort in Colombia enters final phase as quake toll reaches 265. A bright spot in Colombia as rescuers free quake victims. New Jersey mother died saving daughter in a Colombia earthquake, is what the family is saying. So Colombia's earthquake is deja vu for Venezuelans. The government response is anything but. Japan protests Vladimir Putin's visit to Kuril Island. So Japan's Prime Minister Takichi says Putin's visit to disputed Kuril Island is absolutely unacceptable. Japan has condemned the visit by Vladimir Putin to this disputed island. Putin visits island seized from Japan in World War II, and this is definitely angering Tokyo. Millions across Europe witnessed a historic solar eclipse. So definitely that is something that a lot of folks were going to Europe to see, and they saying that this is Europe's best solar eclipse since 1999. Taiwan weaponizes Coast Guard to prepare for battle with China. Taiwan briefly slows its mobile internet to text-only speed as part of a defense drill. Taiwan's military drills clear streets and slows internet in Taipei, and how a drone hellscape might stop a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is something that was being reported even a few days ago. Turkey lays out plans for defense pact with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and definitely new power axis in the making. Three military heavyweights lock arms, complicating the Abraham Accords strategy. And looks like Tehran says Strait of Hormuz is under Iran's control. And Iran defies Trump, declares Strait of Hormuz blocked after president claims U.S. has total control. And Russian blockade of major Ukrainian ports threatens global grain supplies. So Ukraine attacks Russian grain export terminal in Black Sea. And Russia and Ukraine against the grain. South Korea's bull run is something else that's being reported as well. And some people are definitely wondering about this late night Trump Air Force escape. I was actually having a friend of mine on Facebook that was observing that a lot of folks, when they heard that there was going to be an attack that could have threatened Trump, did not even know that their particular plane was under threat. But they did have the Air Force pilots as well as Trump and some of the media that got whisked away on another plane. So there were some folks that were definitely complaining about that in social media. CIA had low confidence in Iranian threat before Trump switched planes in Turkey. So definitely this is something that even the Atlantic is calling the flawed logic of Trump's airplane escape. And Neil Farage faces off against Count Benface in special election that's been denounced as a stunt. And Putin is threatening retaliation if Europe seizes Russian ships. So Putin is definitely in the news quite a bit as well. Lebanon has not agreed to a short list of countries that could verify Hezbollah's disarmament, officials say. Britain, Italy, Switzerland, and Indonesia considered for Hezbollah disarmament verification mission. At least that was reported on yesterday, but it doesn't look like any country has been agreed to. One man's quest to build India's most livable city. So NATO opens Seed Access Road second phase, two steel bridges at Amaraveta. So CM Chandrababu inaugurates Seed Access Road E3, emphasize on farmers' contribution. And of course, a lot of news about the European heat wave. Temperatures at 40 degrees Celsius are expected in Spain, and it's actually supposed to be pretty hot here in Durham, North Carolina as well. Rare warning for extreme heat expanded across England, and like I said, we're facing some heat even here in the United States as well. And over 150 civilians killed in U.S. strikes on Houthis, Pentagon says. So, Pentagon report reveals steep civilian toll of Trump's Yemen campaign. U.S. strikes targeting Houthis kills 153 civilians in Yemen last year, is what the Pentagon review has said. And a Chinese linked hacker hit Taiwan in unprecedented autonomous AI cyber attack. Taiwan says it was targeted last month in AI driven hacking campaign. Like I said, going to bring up Sasha Star, see what he's got going on in his world and all along those lines. And we'll see if other folks join us as well. I did see that the press secretary has getting ready to leave her post. Caroline Levitt is getting ready to deal with motherhood and everything like that. So this is Trump's press secretary that's getting ready to leave, and we'll see who else takes that job and all along those lines. And it looks like two are dead after a military helicopter crash in Texas. So that's something else that is going on as well. And like I said yesterday, David Crowley did defeat Francesca Hong in the Wisconsin primary, and we'll see how this all plays out as well. So, how are you doing today, and everything like that? Because it looks like there's a lot of news in the world, including that heat wave, and even five tornadoes that hit the Chicago area. So it looks like 3 more days of severe storm chances loom over Chicago area. So it looks like we got weather, we got war, we got everything else. And apparently, the USS Abraham Lincoln crew is facing a mental health crisis. So lawmakers demand answers about the USS Abraham Lincoln conditions as report emerged of sailors attempting to jump overboard. So Democratic senators are demanding answers about the conditions aboard this ship if we've got folks that are trying to take their own life after extended deployment. So, in a fiery meeting, military families confront the acting Navy Secretary over conditions on the USS Lincoln. So, we'll see how this all plays out. And of course, the death penalty will also be in the news because 3 men are set for lethal injection on the same day in Tennessee, Alabama, and Oklahoma. So, looks like those 3 men will be executed in the same day as the U.S. sees a steep rise in the death penalty. So, it looks like 3 inmates be executed on the same day for the first time in 16 years. So definitely the death penalty, I'm sure the anti-death penalty people will be up in arms and all along those lines. So we'll see how this plays out as well. So what's going on in your world and what have you been following news-wise?
Well, what's interesting about U.S. that there is a new phase of war now. There is no direct attacks against Iran, and there is almost like a blackout on any news about Iran. U.S. is not threatening Iran. U.S. is not agreeing or disagreeing with anything. They just like put it on a back burner like it doesn't exist. Okay, there's a lot of things, economical news and this and there, but no news regarding Iran. The Strait of Hormuz are closed as ever in the last several months. So how is Trump playing a game where by the time of election all Iran issue will be forgotten and people will would not care one way or another? Is that strategy something that may work? What do you think, Greg?
I don't think that this is day 103 of gas in the US, national average being over $4 a gallon. Trump promised us $2 a gallon. We're the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which are giant caverns under Texas and Louisiana, are at their lowest levels ever. And you can't run them. The lower you run them, the more you screw up the caverns. They need to be full of oil, otherwise they start crumbling. So I don't know how much longer they can pull oil. Well, Trump will make them pull way too much oil out of them. They still contain about 300 million barrels of oil, but as the oil goes down, they have to replace it with water to keep the caverns intact. Except they're salt cap. They're made out of salt. So when you put more water in, it eats the cavern. So I don't know. Trump is look. It's not a fixable thing. 82 days until the midterms, and as you've been saying, Iran is happy for Trump to look like a jackass. So they're not going to give him any concessions. I think the average number of ships going through the strait is per day now is 13, which is the normal traffic is 100. So yeah, Trump is in a position that he can't. What can he do?
Yeah, I don't know what he can do either, and everything along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this
I
all.
mean, what he can do is announce all sorts of other crazy bullshit to try to distract. Um,
Well, one crazy thing that he tried to distract with is apparently he was having his press secretary leave her job. She said she wants to spend time being a mom and all along those lines because that's a more demanding job, even though she is a loyal ally to Trump and everything like that. So and we'll see who else she gets appointed to this job, but it looks like she's the first one of the recent folks to be leaving the job, and we'll see who is her replacement. But I do know that she just had a second child, and that's what she said she wants to concentrate on is motherhood and everything like that. So, what's our take on the legacy of Caroline Levitt?
well, I mean, she rather aggressively lied for the president, but that's what press secretaries do, particularly Trump's press secretaries. They bullshit reporters, and if reporters push back, then she pushed back pretty aggressively. Trump did a thing yesterday, or the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department issued a final rule that permanently removes the requirement for U.S. companies and U.S. persons to report who owns them.
Right, exactly.
And also announced it'll delete previously reported ownership information. So I don't know much about this. Sasha maybe knows more, but I don't see how this does anything but make it easier to commit financial crimes. If you don't have to say who owns your company, that leads to foreign ownership that we don't know about. It leads to all sorts of shenanigans.
Well, exactly. The main question to me is how American taxpayers benefit from this new law. What's the benefit from average American taxpayer?
The only argument I've heard is that it makes it easier for business owners because they don't have to fill out a form.
But how American people benefit from it? Who cares whether it's difficult to fill the form or it's not so difficult? How American people who are fighting to put food on the table benefit? That's a main issue.
It doesn't do jack shit for regular Americans or even American business owners. So you have to take 10 minutes to fill out a form to honestly say who owns your company.
But there's something that Trump likes to do as well, and apparently he's done it very effectively this time because he likes to go after his perceived enemies. And we do know that there is an organization, I think they've even had offices here in North Carolina, if I remember correctly, but the Southern Poverty Law Center does a lot of investigation of things around class and race and a number of other things. But the former employee has been arrested on fraud charges because she's been indicted over payment to informants. And so this sounds like another case of Trump's Justice Department arrest an expert on the far right, because she is definitely seen as an expert on the far right. And they're accusing her of plotting to misuse far right informants and everything like that. So the young lady's name is Heidi Barrich, and she was arrested in your neck of the woods in California and everything like that. But definitely, this sounds like another attempt to target somebody that is a anti-Trump person.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this story. I am familiar with another California story. So 14 months ago, the Lakers were sold for $10 billion.
Right.
Yesterday, they were sold again for $12.5 billion. So the guy who owned the team who also owns the Dodgers, he owned them for 14 months. There was some questioning about his, something that led him to want to offload it. He made $2.5 billion off of owning the Lakers for a little more than a year. The new buyers, Bob Iger, who used to run Disney, among the media oligarchs, he's I would say one of the less dickish ones. There are some ones like David Zaslav who are kind of terrible. He seems like a pretty okay guy. And his co-owner is Josh Kushner, the brother of Jared Kushner,
Right.
who I've looked him up, and he seems to be less sketchy than Jared.
Let's get to the Jared and everything like that. And
He's married to to Carly Kloss, who started off as a supermodel, but really is an advocate for kids learning to code. So
this is the California team that's been bought, because I know that Kwanzaa Jones and her husband bought the Padres, and they are doing well. I think that's the second place team behind the Dodgers and everything like that. So they are definitely in the playoff hunt and all along those lines. So, to your point, the Dodgers have a lot of money, and they've won, I think, 2 championships in a row. And most people think that they have stacked the decks that they will probably.
They're the second winningest team of the entire 21st century. I think they trail the Yankees by a few victories. The Yankees are also known for spending huge money on their players. The Dodgers make huge revenue, and then they pump it right back into buying a ton of expensive, good players. Yeah. And other teams complain about it, and the Dodgers say, well, just spend some of your money.
Spend some of your money, or get some of your billionaire donors to invest. I know that I'm a fan of the Brewers out of Milwaukee, because when I went to school there, and I've been a fan ever since. And that's what I hear sometimes, is people saying, hey, y'all got some rich folks. Harley Davidson's based in Milwaukee. Some of the beer companies are based in Milwaukee. Get some of those rich people to invest in the team more than they might be doing. And I don't know how much they're investing in the corporate folks and everything like that.
I've been watching the Little League baseball and softball playoffs on ESPN, and it's pretty good baseball. And what's nice about it is Little League games are only 6 innings long, so you don't have to watch a whole 9 innings. Is a lot to watch.
Hey, it could be worse. Soccer and rugby and a lot of other sports go much longer than that, even though I do think I'm going to try to make it to one of the Carolina Courage games.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like the WNBA, because an NBA game is 4 12-minute quarters. Right. WNBA 10-minute quarters. So it's 17% shorter.
I did see another sports news, and we'll get back to some more hard news and everything like that. But I did see that I believe, speaking of LA, the LA Clippers are now going to have the tallest player and the shortest player on the same team. So this is the first time I think they said that this has happened since Manute Bol and Muggsy Bogues. But yeah, they've got a player, I think from Japan, who's like 5'3" or something like that. And then they've got like this 7-foot tall player, or 7-foot plus tall player as well. So they did say that they will have like the serious contrast, because they have both been signed by the Clippers, which is the other team in Los Angeles, and everything like that. So we'll see if they both get playing time. But yeah.
Okay, to get back to serious, this week the U.S. will hit $40 trillion in national debt, and we will be paying the highest interest rate in 25 years, because investors are a little skittish about buying more U.S. debt. So, I don't know, Sasha, how much are we paying to have this giant credit card bill a year?
Trillions. I don't know if the data exists, actually, specifically for this question. I'm not sure. What I've said no more than once on these programs is that the individual deaths of Americans, which mostly on credit cards issues, that we are talking about 22% for the balance, and late charges, late fees of all kinds. And surprisingly, it's a part of GDP. So whenever the Republicans reporting that GDP is growing tremendously or so on, the debt of Americans, never mind national debt, the individual debt of Americans is growing, and they're paying extraordinary charges like late fees and the huge 22, sometimes more percentages. That's a big issue. I'm surprised that Americans don't talk about it. And,
Well,
don't
it's
discuss it.
embarrassing, and it weighs on you. If you've got a bunch of credit card debt at 20%, you're worried about that every day, but it's embarrassing you got yourself into that situation, except that like a quarter of Americans are in that situation.
Yeah,
It,
and
it,
well,
it,
Yeah,
it's like not being able to get a boner, that a lot of people have that issue, but nobody wants to talk about it. But the national debt, we're paying more than $1 trillion in interest. We're just paying to let, we're paying bondholders, including foreign countries, $1 trillion a year to say thank you for loaning us this money so we can keep running the country. The interest on the national debt eats up 18 to 19% of all tax revenue. So nearly $1 out of 5 that you pay the government in taxes goes for basically the national credit card bill.
yeah,
You got your personal credit card bill, and then we have the national bill. And it's, Trump made noise about fixing it, but no, 28% of that debt, which is,
made noise about another issue.
so that if you do the math, 11 trillion out of the 40 trillion, Trump gave us that.
No, he gave us a lot of debt, but he also made another promise as well, and it's part of the reason that some people think that he won and everything like that, because he was very much against Roe versus Wade and everything like that. And now we've got a number of folks that are going from state to state to accomplish whatever they need to do, whether that's an abortion or whether that's the surrogacy or a number of other things. So it looks like a surrogate mother left your neck of the woods, California, and gave birth in Texas amid a serious legal
This
dispute.
is an interesting case.
Right.
So this couple hires a woman to hold their pregnancy. I don't know why the wife could, but people have different reasons. And tests on the fetus about 6 months in show that the kid has a non-functioning left side of the heart.
Right.
This is a fairly common birth defect, and the parents tell the surrogate, abort the kid. The surrogate does a little bit of research and finds out that this is a correctable issue, that a series of 3 operations after the baby's born get the baby working, right? So you one operation immediately after birth, then you wait a few months for the baby to heal, you hit it again, and after 3 operations, the heart works. So the surrogate says, hell no, I'm not aborting this kid. I'm going to get the kid treatment. And the parents are like, no, we own that baby. And so it goes back and forth with the courts. The surrogate goes to Texas, which is friendly to not aborting babies, and wins the right to not abort the baby. Now, there's one more a related issue, which I think it's a dumb issue for the Democrats to do leading up to the midterms, which is passing legislation that allows abortions up, as long as the woman is pregnant, deep into the 3rd trimester. And there's a reason for this. It is because 8 months, 9 months in, you find out your baby's brain, that the baby doesn't have a brain, or some other catastrophic issue. And you need the medical right or now it doesn't happen often. It happens like 1 in 1,000 abortions are an 8-month abortion, but you need it to give doctors the right to either abort to save the mother's life or abort a non-viable fetus. But the language is always in such a way that the Republicans can say, well, Democrats want to abort babies right up to and even after the moment of birth. And it allows the Republicans to bullshit everybody. So I don't understand why the Dems don't put some freaking language in their legislation that offer them some protection on that. Jacoby, I think I'm a little wrong on this. Tell me where I'm wrong.
It doesn't matter what language you put in there. It doesn't. They're going to try and use semantics to create some argument, some bogus argument out of no matter what they say. So claiming that, oh, you don't know why the Dems don't put, it doesn't matter what they put in there, because whatever they put in there is going to be manipulated, and they're going to create something, some outlandish claim. And then what's going to happen out of that is that we're going to argue, oh, well, that's not what they said, and it's just a bogus claim.
All right, so the deal is the common wisdom, at least among Dems, is nobody wants to have an 8-month abortion, that it's always some tragic freaking circumstance where something's going on with the health of the mother and or the child. Usually that the child, deep into the pregnancy, they discover that the kid has a catastrophic birth defect that will render the kid unable to be alive once delivered, or the kid's already dead. So, some late term abortions are, you've got an 8.5-month-old fetus, but the fetus is now dead in there, and without the law, you would have to leave the fetus in there until the mother can naturally give birth, which might take more weeks and weeks, which is dangerous because now you've got a dead thing in your womb, generating, the possibility of sepsis and all. So there's a reason to allow abortions at any point in the pregnancy.
The thing is,
that's going on in a couple states.
Again, it doesn't matter whatever they say. Doesn't matter whatever language. It's going to be manipulated into something crazy. And then, again, we're going to argue over the point. Honestly, the stance is it's none of my business. It's truly none of my business at all. Whatever that woman and that doctor decide, it's none of my business.
Yeah, and a doctor, nobody, as I said, nobody wants to have an abortion at 8 months. And a doctor won't okay an abortion of a healthy fetus at 8 months. The doctor will be like, no, it's too late just because it's inconvenient. Some freaking crazy lady is like, I got to get rid of it. No, the doctor will say, nope, that you have a healthy baby in there. You're going to carry the term.
The thing is, we all know that. But the problem is that if you had somebody in the opposite view on the station arguing, their first argument is, that's not what they're doing. It's a baby. You're killing a child. You're committing murder and all this other stuff. They go down this whole emotional rant, but they're not actually talking about anything that is to being discussed. Nothing. So again, that's how it becomes manipulated. And then we get to this argument back and forth of, well, that's not what's being talked about. How is it my business to know what somebody else is doing with their medical choice?
Well, yeah, okay, but you say medical choice in late term pregnancy.
Is that a medical procedure?
I'm just saying, in late term pregnancy, it's not a choice. If you've got a
Rick, is it a medical procedure?
Yeah.
So in their medical procedure, why is it my business?
If you're there's a term I like, instead of Bible thumper, if you're a God botherer, if you're always talking to Jesus, if you're going like this all day, you're a God botherer. You're like, hey God, hey. But anyway, if you're a Bible thumper, a God botherer, if that's your number one important issue, then you think it is your business.
No, but that's my point though. Is like, when Mark goes to the doctor, should I be able to say whatever Mark gets done and what procedures, and I should know everything about Mark's?
No.
When Sasha goes to the doctor, should I know about that? And suggest different procedures. I'm not his doctor. I don't. So that's my whole point is the argument when we get into these arguments over that stuff, and that's where the whole thing is. It's not a one size fits all. It's not my business.
Okay.
I should not be making, and so that's why
we have laws about that. We have HIPAA, but I want to go on to a different story, which is the USS Abraham Lincoln has terrible conditions going on, and what's coming out is that the Secretary of the Navy is a weirdo. That so acting U.S. Navy Secretary Hung Kao drew public attention, media scrutiny for past remarks, warning that a wave of witchcraft communities were taking over California, and
a wave of what
could happen in Virginia. So a lunatic is running the Navy. He claims that Lovers Point in Pacific Grove, California, had become a dark place with a lot of witchcraft.
Now, what is his claim on this USS Lincoln, though? Because like I said,
I don't know, but he's going to get hauled up in front of the Senate to answer questions about terrible conditions on the USS Lincoln, where they're out of milk, they're eating rotten meat. I don't know, the people are throwing themselves off the ship. They've been at sea for 250 days, which is way beyond standard limits in, that unless you're, I guess if you're in World War II, maybe there'd be a reason to be at sea for 2/3 of a year. But we're not in World War II, and so he has to answer questions, but he's also a crazy person.
He sounds like a crazy person. Well, the other thing that Trump officials are dealing is that they don't want the things with mail ballots. So they're again urging the U.S. Supreme Court intervention on mail ballots, and this could be another attempt to stop certain people from voting and all along those lines. So what is our take on this? Because apparently Trump again has asked the Supreme Court to save the USPS mail ballot plan and all along those lines.
So in 2020, I buy things that get shipped to me. I'll buy my wife some stuff. They get shipped to me via the U.S. mail. In 2020, the U.S. Postal Service went to crap because they lost a bunch of staff due to COVID. They hired a bunch of yahoos, and Trump hired this DeJoy guy to fuck up the U.S. mail to screw up voting. And so I remember in 2020, I got a bunch of packages that were smashed, that had been broken into. My wife got me beef jerky for my birthday. Somebody ate the beef jerky. I sent my mom cookies from Trader Joe's, because at the time they didn't have a Trader Joe's in Colorado. I hid a thrift store $4 bracelet in one of the boxes. She gets the box. Somebody had torn open, eaten the cookies, and stolen the bracelet. Mail wasn't getting delivered correctly, and we have 82 days until the midterms. Trump has appointed another jagoff postmaster general, so they will be legal or not, they will be messing with the mail. So if you're going to vote by mail, do it as early as possible to give your ballot the best chance of getting there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or drop off your ballot at a polling place, so you don't involve the U.S. Postal Service at all. I love the U.S. Postal Service. It's a great service.
It's doing great and everything like that. I did see that Steve had joined us as well, and I was actually going to ask him, because we've been talking a lot about the established Democrats versus the Democratic Socialists and all along those lines. And apparently James Carville has decided to back the candidate from Michigan, the Muslim candidate, and all along those lines. And some people are surprised that he did that, but he's like, no, that other candidate that he's running against is certifiably crazy, and therefore I will back him versus backing the other candidate and everything like that. But what's your take on this debate? And I'm sure that Toby has some thoughts as well between the progressives and the Democratic Socialists and the impact that it could have on these various elections.
Well, anyway, it's great to see everybody. Sorry, I didn't get my jacket on today. Kind of not feeling that great, but I'll be back on world politics and everything next week. I'm leaving town for a few days, but I think that I think it's important, and I think we talked about this last time, that we get away from trying to put labels on these candidates and to really focus in on the issues. So hopefully, Al Sayed can talk about housing, the economy, gas prices, electricity, energy, kitchen table issues, and then also focus in on, from a foreign policy perspective, a coalition-based diplomatic foreign policy, because this foreign policy seems to be addressing our economic security at home on many of these issues I just mentioned. So, but I think it's very easy for them to put on a tag Democratic Socialist, and for us to put on a tag MAGA Republican, and we get away from the issues that are important to the American people. Now, when we may have differences on how we get there, government is not the be-all, end-all answer to everything either. I think we have to realize that. Having spent 14 years of my life in the government, I can tell you it moves very slow. It just doesn't happen overnight, and there's so much regulation and bureaucracy in the system. Even getting a zoning, can take months or even a year in a city like Durham or Raleigh or wherever. So, I just think that's where we're at. And he has some controversial things he said about Gaza and Israel and things like that. But, he's entitled to his own beliefs. But anyway, that's my take on it. I mean, I think we have to get back in the candidates that speak about the issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot.
I like to forward
the Muslim designation is another like a hook that Republicans can use to generate fear.
Yeah.
So there are 2 billion Muslims in the world. That's a quarter of the world. The vast majority of them are not like dangerous lunatics, of course. It's hard to find statistics, but the little poking around reveals that maybe 3 Muslims out of 8 are what you might call secular or non-practicing Muslims. They have a Muslim heritage. They might identify as Muslim, but they don't engage in any of the rituals. Like, I'm Jewish, and I'm secular Jewish. I don't observe the Sabbath. We used to, when our kid was young, we used to belong to a temple, but it was like $3,000 a year. And once she became too old for Sunday school, we're like, this is spending a lot of money on something that we don't. And so we haven't belonged to a temple. It's like, and it's that just calling somebody identifying as Muslim or having Muslim heritage, contrary to what right-wing lunatics would have you to believe, they're not intent on world domination. They're just regular people doing regular stuff.
The thing is, Rick, being Muslim is no different from being Christian, from no different from being Jewish, from no different from being whatever. When you stated that you don't have statistics, do you have statistics on Christians? Do you have statistics?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can. I'm sure if I
so the whole it goes back into what I say. The whole argument gets to be about, hey, it's no different. And yes, they're using they're trying to create Muslim individuals into boogeymen, and that is horrible. That's what they're doing to transgender individuals. That's if you look, there's what's his name, the domestic abuser and the guy who's running for office in Texas. He's already put out a AI slop ad attacking transgender individuals because that's their whole play. Enos Cantor and those other individuals, that's their whole play. They have nothing else to talk about at this moment. So what they're trying to do is get in the ethos. Let's talk about these boogeymen, and let's not talk about the economy and what we need to fix. Let's not talk about these other things. If you don't, and so then the argument becomes, hey, Rick, you're a Democrat. You don't care about You don't care about women. You don't care about men playing in women's sports. Rather than that's not the discussion. And then it goes into, hey, Democrats only talk about. Last night I was watching a show, and this goes to the label point that Steve was making. I was watching a show, and the first thing the commentator made is, hey, the individual running in Kansas, Andy Bashir, is the same thing as the Democrat socialists. They're all socialists. No, that's the whole label thing, because people don't understand what the labels are. They don't understand the meanings of the words. Sasha talks about that eloquently all the time. They just throw them out there as boogeyman because you try to create you do this whole otherism thing.
Let me talk about an equivalent. So 2 billion Muslims in the world, 2.4 billion Christians in the world. So we all know what it means to be a Christian. At least in the U.S., that Christians come in different flavors. Like there are people who, they say they're Christian, and all they celebrate is pretty much Christmas. There's no going to church, but they come from, they got Christian. And then there's like the hardcore Christians who go to church every week or even more than that. And everybody understands that, and nobody freaks out about Christians.
The reason why, Rick, is because we don't talk about the extremities of that. We don't talk about the first thing. There's a movie coming out that Ben Shapiro and Jonathan Majors put together. Well, Jonathan Majors is an actor, but Ben Shapiro, and what they're doing is they're actually highlighting and trying to focus in on. They're trying to tie Muslims to domestic terrorism. That's what the whole focus of that whole movie is. If you watch the trailer, that's all it's talking about. But that is what the normal conversation around the religion is at this moment, because they're trying to create that boogeyman out of it. But hey, if you want to talk about Christian extremism, do you realize that the last giant mass shootings all tied around the Christian religion? The KKK is an extremist group that considers themselves a Christian religion. But hey, guess what? We're not going to talk about that as that connection there.
Well, plus, because we're familiar with Christians in our daily lives. We're either Christian or we know Christians.
We
know
personalize it. That's the thing. So when we talk about that personalization of it, if you say that the Klan is actually a Christian extremist organization, which it actually is, you're going to take offense to that. And because we take offense to that, we don't have that conversation or normalize it. What we've normalized is something that we are not a part of. We are not Muslims. So therefore, we're going to create some extremist view about Muslims because we're not taking offense to it, and we're not personalizing it the way we do Christianity. So we don't look at it that way. So instead of, when we speak about the Muslim religion, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. If not, in my opinion, he's the GOAT. And he is one of the greatest activists. He's one of the most eloquent speakers. Love listening to him, but we don't treat him as a Muslim. We don't. That's what he is.
Yeah.
We don't. And we don't look at him as him being the prime example of what a Muslim is. We don't. What we look at is try and find these extremist individuals and try and label that, and then we run with that. And that's the problem that we run into.
Yep. Steve?
Yeah, I think we just have to quit. I have to leave in a minute, guys, but we have to just quit putting labels on people. I mean, my thing is this. I mean, I think that I've said this time and time again, that I think that the what's happened today in American politics is that the extremes of each party have controlled the narrative, and many people in the middle of the road feel left out of the conversation. So the primary system, I believe, isn't working in America anymore because it doesn't take out those.
Because it favors lunatic candidates.
Well, not really lunatic candidates, just extreme, the fringes of each party. But political parties were effective in America. If you look at the history of parties, you look at the Democratic Party when Lyndon Johnson was president of the United States. in order to pull off civil rights reform, he had to work with the Dixie Rights, the Dixiecrats, and the Northern Democrats, and people that were opposed to this. And what ended up happening was great legislation that was put forward that passed the Congress and the Senate, the Voting Rights Act that Lyndon Johnson signed. But political parties and the differences within those parties actually helped to develop very effective policymaking. Somewhere along the line, this actually all really began, quite frankly, with the Tea Party movement back in 2010, when the Republicans came. And today, those Tea Party Republicans look like moderates compared to the MAGA Trump Republicans to the extreme right. And now you've got the Democratic Socialists that are to the left. But what about those in the center? So I agree with Joe Manchin, former U.S. Senator, that we need to have independent candidates run for office. But the way the system is, it's so hard for these independent candidates to get on the ballot. Basically impossible in North Carolina. You're looking at, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on these Senate races, on these congressional races. Outside money, dark money, political PAC money. And, it's sad. And I think that's where we are. And I just don't see it changing. We have to get used to it. And but then you get to the general election, the presidency, where it becomes tougher, because someone made a comment yesterday, AOC is so popular, she could be the president. Well, they made one mistake. The presidency of the United States isn't based on the popular vote. It's based on the Electoral College. So you can win the most votes and you can lose the election.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton got almost 3 million more votes than Trump did.
You need a candidate that can appeal to those Midwest states, Ohio, the southern states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, Minnesota. These are the states. We know California and Seattle and Washington are going to go very liberal blue. We know the states that are going to go very red. But what about those shades of gray? What about those shades of purple? And that's what would be interesting is I would say that these independents are worried about the economy. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about gas prices. That's what either party needs to go after to get those electoral maps, to the 270, the path to 270. And I think that's always been the challenge with Democrats. They pulled it off, I guess, the last 3 or 4 presidential elections, not including Obama, only one has made it, Joe Biden.
Yeah, Joe Biden made it.
Lost, Kamala lost.
I think, Steve, the big part that you're at is we're always trying to label each other. The problem comes into play is that the reason why an independent candidate will never make it is that independent candidate doesn't have that grassroots or that base to really grow. Every independent candidate starting at any large, be it a state or a federal election, is never going to make it because you don't have that name recognition, nor do you have a base of support to actually support that. So even considering independent at the presidency is ridiculous because you don't have anything across the board or any agreement across the board to support you in every single state. And that's what's necessary for that. And everybody talks about an independent candidate, but until somebody creates a coalition to actually create a party, for example, if the DSA were to take off and actually start picking up local elections, school board elections, creating a movement around it, and then going from state to state to state, maybe doing the South, the southern states to start with, then going north, then they could create a candidate that had a base of support to actually push them out there. And that would be helpful. But I think, honestly, it started, what you're speaking about, the problem that we have, started before that. Honestly, that started in the 60s, because once the party switched, that became where the extremists became the voices of the party. That's when they created the Southern Strategy. And that Southern Strategy was always about, instead of focusing on the pinpoint problems that people need and people are wanting to focus on. We're going to focus on all the anger and the angst. That's what they used. The Republican Party did when they moved the Dixiecrats and actually the people in between to start hating different individuals. And the people in the middle started to get left out even more and more. And that only became amplified now is what Trump, and actually it started with Sarah Palin, but that is what the messaging campaign has always been about. We don't talk about the issues anymore. Why?
But where it switched is honestly, and we're getting back into world politics. I think what's interesting today is that, well, let's look back to what happened. I mean, what happened was the Democrats really kind of got caught sleeping on the wheel when, manufacturing jobs were being decimated. Cities like Detroit were not doing really well. They were run by Democrats. And Trump came along and said, look, I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to do great deals. I'm going to bring jobs back. So he beats Hillary Clinton. The American people give him a chance. He muffs it up. Biden comes in, but then Trumpism is back. It was already created, so he was able to get back in. But what created it was, I think, the middle class, the working people of this country who were not seeing democratic policies working for them. And these were Black Americans. These were Hispanic Americans. These were shifting. If you look at Donald Trump, 45% of Latinos in the last race supported Donald Trump. I think the number was up to 35% of Black Americans in suburban areas. Younger voters are clearly in favor of Trump.
Because Biden was terrible at making the case for himself.
He flipped it, Jacoby. He flipped it and made the Republican Party the party of the working class.
He did flip it. And you know why he flipped it, Steve?
What's happened.
Steve, what happened was he told everybody he was going to do something, but he did not. And that's where people were upset because the messaging campaign, that's the whole point. When he ran against Kamala Harris, we all came, well, not me because I tried to point it out, but everybody argued that it was different. But we all came on here yelling, well, they need to stop talking about trans issues. Not one time did Kamala Harris talk about trans issues. That's where the money got shifted and the money was spent in commercial ads talking about that. So what Rick is saying, and the flip, Steve, we have to stop the flip part because the actual numbers themselves were actually working, but the messaging wasn't. And that is where the problem is. What we need to talk about is what is the actual reality of the situation and work from there. And the reality is that the Democrat Party does not know how to message, doesn't at all. No matter how good their policies are, because even the CBO numbers pointed out how Hillary Clinton's policies were better than Trump's, but nobody cared about that because what you just stated, Trump came out and said he wanted to make America great again. Yes, people fell for a slogan, and that's where the problem is.
Yeah, look at the slogan.
Messaging.
Look at the slogan, defund the police. That was a frickin' disaster.
Exactly.
It took a ton of explaining that we don't want to get rid of police. We want some of the funding for police to go for not just guns and crap, but for dealing with the mentally ill. But it took all this explaining, and you started off behind you started off underwater already.
Exactly. And that's the problem. And that's where the Democrats themselves are missing because the Democrats are always trying to recreate themselves because, hey, they didn't really like what we said about defund the police, even though we were talking about everything. If you break apart the pieces of defund the police, people wanted that.
It was so good. All you have to do is change one word. Reform the police.
The Green New Deal. The Green New Deal, if you take out pieces of the Green New Deal in terms of, hey, do you want this? Do you want this? People voted for it. But the problem was people got a slogan, hey, we're just going to go. They're trying to boogeyman this. And that's what happened. And we fall into the trap of arguing about a name and never about the policy. We argued tooth and nail. Well, people hated Kamala Harris policies. They didn't. They didn't at all. What they argued, what they hated was we're going to boogeyman the transgender issue, and that's what we're riding with. That's where the problem with the Democrat policy.
You totally hit the nail. And, I
Toes.
think and the problem is, I'll end with this. This is a great way for me to close out. What I'll end with is that I think, and I've said this time and time again, when I'm thinking a lot about now. I want to go back to Carolina. My niece is. I want to sit in a political science class. But we used to teach about all the different parts of the world, and then global conflicts were separate from the economy that we are facing. But now the fact is, what's going on in Iran. You look at today. We didn't go over the world affairs, but recent drone attacks hitting these grain dispensaries in Ukraine and Russia could affect global supply chain disruption of food, and that's the food insecurity, right? Prices go up. We're seeing this with energy, with Iran. So what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Ukraine, is affecting us here in North Carolina, in the U.S. And it's the economy. What China not firing a shot in this war, but still winning. What do we mean by that? Well, they're building up their AI. They're building up their technology. They're building up better relations with the Middle East. They want to be a superpower, right? And so that affects AI and its acceleration in the United States in terms of jobs being replaced. So all of these issues are interconnected. It affects our energy strategy with AI. So I think it's interesting that we have to get back to who are the candidates that are going to talk about these issues, that are going to connect the dots. So, my analogy is, as a former tennis player, nationally ranked tennis player, rather than focusing on the opponent all the time, which is in this case for Democrats possessor Donald Trump, let's go back to basics. Let's hit one more ball back over the net. That's what my mom taught me and my coach. It isn't about the winners. It isn't about the passing shots. Let's get one more ball back. Let's get quick, hit the yellow ball, and move to the next yellow ball. Kind of like Jimmy Connor's style, consistency.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you got to be consistent.
consistent message.
You got to be consistent.
And I agree with that, Steve. And that's where, again, the Democrat Party falls into the traps. When transgender issues, I think El Said actually did it really well.
Because he's getting better. He's impressing me more and more.
The thing is, what he's doing is he's not falling for the bait. And that's what the Democrat Party does. And that's where the message gets lost. He's saying, hey, what does transgender the issue have to do with, I can't help get money in your pocket. That's not doing anything for me. So him doing that is the way the Democrat Party should do.
Yeah,
But they're not. What they're
No,
doing
definitely
is falling for the trap, and they're arguing back and forth. When the Republican Party puts out some crazy ad or Donald Trump doing some dumb stuff, they're not actually pushing back. They're a lot. Scott Jennings can't stand the man to death because he sits there and lies, bold-faced lies, but he's good at it. Because what he does is he pivots to some stupid talking point and then tries to pigeonhole you to saying, well, you hate this, you hate this. I'm not even talking about that, dude. What do you?
They said he might be they said he might be the next press secretary now that Caroline Leavitt has left. I think somebody actually asked him directly and everything whether he wanted that job.
Donald Trump will not pick a guy to be the press secretary.
He likes pretty ladies.
Exactly. He wants a pretty face because it's a manipulative tactic. That's why.
But I did see just really quickly, Steve. I did see something that was startling to me, and all along those lines. And it's not just because of having you, but having other friends as well of Indian descent. But it seems to me that there was a report earlier this day or earlier this month that there has been an uptick, a significant uptick. I don't know how many it's been in Indian attacks in not just the U.S. but also in the U.K. and in Canada and other parts of the world. So as one that used to do politics, how concerned are you about this uptick? Because I just recently saw this, and it was actually reported in the Indian Times as well as some other publications as well. So they're saying that there's an uptick on attacks on the Indian population.
I'm working on getting a guest mark for Monday. Indian Independence Day is on Saturday, but with the day India became free, I don't know much about it. It could be getting caught in the Muslim-Indian conflict, India-Pakistan. I don't know. There was a mosque recently that was denied in Mooresville, North Carolina, not Morrisville. Simply denied it because it was a mosque. So you are seeing some xenophobic hate crimes against all minorities, unfortunately. And I don't know whether this is a circumstance of that. Of course, I often joke if you take Indians out of the American economy, we would be in a lot of trouble. I mean, three of the big tech run by CEOs of Indian descent, all educated in India: Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, and Arvind Krishnan. And so even for Donald Trump and these MAGA Republicans like Stephen Miller, the big tech were not educated in the United States. They got their H-1B visas and came here, and today are running the companies that we buy all of our software and technology from. So I find it funny that it's kind of in the face of these xenophobic hate mongers that keep saying it's a Christian white nation. Well, that's simply not true. You look at the success of Indians and many other minorities, but I don't know what's driving it. But we'll talk about it more next week.
All right, I got one more quick story. Scott
Yeah.
Jennings' boss might be up for sale. CNN likes to make these panels to piss people off where they'll have 5 people talking and one of them is going to be like a hyper Trumpy bullshitter, and it gets people to hate watch. Anyway, CNN looks like it might be sold as part of the Paramount Time Warner merger, that they're not going to own it. And Barry Diller says he might buy CNN. Depending on who ends up owning CNN, maybe they will change some of their policies and not have jagoffs like Scott Jennings on all the time just to spread bullshit. I mean, that's very optimistic, but
We'll see how that plays out and if that works or not.
See you tomorrow.
All right. And we're going to wrap it up.
I'll be opening that up. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good.
all right.
So
See you
we
guys.
get on that. Yeah. See you.